Hey friends, it's good to be with you again here at the beginning of April. I hope you're going to have a great month. And as you're thinking about the months ahead, I'm thinking ahead till May and June, where we have May Mother's Day and June Father's Day. And in light of the need to help parents with their parenting and grandparents also, and friends for that matter, I thought maybe we just talk about child raising. This is something that really I can go all the way back in my relationship with Jim when I was a student ministry pastor. He was a music director in Fresno, California, and we worked together at the same church on staff there. Had a great time. He taught me a lot. One of the ways he taught me about the parenting process was he would take me over to his home from time to time, and we had observed how he raised Ryan and Bethany. Barbara and Jim were amazing parents. They still are amazing parents, grandparents, you name it. And so we learned a lot from them over the years. When he came to work with me in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area, he was there for over a decade. We worked together, had a great time. We went to a lot of conferences. One of the conferences that we went to over the years, year after year, was GLASS, GLASS. It stood for Greater Los Angeles Sunday School. And that conference was so helpful to me as my wife and I, ended up having three children. And so every year we'd go back to that conference and we learned some things from the parenting classes that they had at the conference. And then I would turn around and teach that to the parents in our church and grandparents. And it helped and it really made a difference. And of course, as you think about that and some of the things that we need to be responsible for when it comes to child raising, well, the scriptures is pretty clear. And just to mention a couple passages, Proverbs 22:6 says that we're to train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. What a wonderful promise that is. We want to be doing all that we can as God works in the lives of parents and their children. We want to do all that we can to train them up in the ways that God wants those children to go. And of course, you're probably familiar with Ephesians 6:4, where it says, Fathers, do not exasperate your children. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do is cause them to want nothing to do with you or your parenting, but perhaps want nothing to do with our God. And that would be awful. But instead, Paul says, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. And there it is again, training and instruction. And of course, there's a lot that we could talk about. We talk about a child raising, parenting, the process, the skills, all that's needed, the wisdom, the love. But I come back again and again to Genesis chapter 2, where God gives us a little hint of some skills or some essentials related to the child raising process. And of course, this is not a creation account where he's just created man and woman and he's placed them in the Garden of Eden. It was paradise. And the Lord, it says in Genesis 2:16 and 17, and the Lord God commanded the man, he said, You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will surely die. Now, I've thought much about this verse. I mean, I've thought about it in terms of sin and the problem of sin in the world and the conditions that we live in today. But I've also thought about it in light of what was God doing here to help his children make the best choice so that they might enjoy the fruit of righteousness and live at the very center of God's plan. Well, as I look at these two verses, it tells me number one, that God gave them choice. I mean, they were not robots. He wanted them to choose to love him with all of their heart, soul, mind, and strength. So he gave them choice. They were free to eat from any tree in the garden, but he also gave them limits when he said, But you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So you have choices here. You have a limit, and this limit basically said, there are plenty of trees here for you to enjoy and benefit by, but there's one tree God was forbidding them to eat from. Now, whatever his reasons were, the key here is that he set a limit that he expected for them to obey. And then he gave them the consequence of disobedience to this limit. He said, for when you eat of it, when you eat of the fruit from the tree of knowledge and good and evil, you will surely die. Now that's a consequence. So God was using in his child raising plan, we might just say, three parenting essentials: choices, limits, and consequences. And I've found that this has been very helpful to speak about these three topics, these three matters, when it comes to the matter of parenting, of child raising, of seeking to raise up our children in the way that they should go, God's way, so that when they're old, they don't depart from that way, but they walk in that way. Key to that process is, first of all, choices. One of the things that we are responsible to do as parents or grandparents or friends for that matter or church is to help our children make responsible choices. In fact, the process of moving from immaturity to maturity is directly connected to the way that we handle the choices that are before us. We want to be uh, smart, we want to be wise, we want to choose to do that which God knows is best. And so we give our kids choices, and hopefully they make more and more good choices, whether we're in the room or not. And then there are limits. There are limits. If we don't set some kind of limits, everything is a go. And we all know that there are certain things that are good for us and certain things that are bad for us. And so, in that process, we must, as parents, help our children first uh, live by limits and then learn to set good limits over the years as they prove that they can actually live within the limits that we set. Hopefully, they will set limits that also will be for their good and the years that are ahead of them. So we use limits and we use consequences. Now, the consequences aren't always negative. I mean, even the consequences there in the garden weren't all negative. I mean, they were free to eat from any tree in the garden. Come on. I mean, the benefit of all of that was there for them to enjoy and to uh, absolutely love. But there was also the negative consequence, which was connected to one tree. And you know what happened? That they gave in to the temptation that Satan put before them. They came to think that if they did eat from that tree, they would experience something that God was going to hold back from them. And obviously, they took the wrong path here. So there were both positive consequences there in the garden and there were negative consequences. And so when I'm trying to help parents and grandparents and when I'm trying to do the best job I can in my parenting or now with our grandchildren, I'm often thinking about these three matters: choices, limits, and consequences. And one of the things that this does, it really helps us as parents not constantly have to be nagging our kids and, you know, us getting exasperated, which then they in turn get exasperated. So, a simple illustration for this: the kids these days are constantly on digital devices. I don't have to tell you that, or they watch television or whatever it is, but hopefully, they learn to make wise choices about that. But as a part of the process, sometimes we have to help them. So, for instance, we say to them, all right, listen, I'm going to let you enjoy some couple of television shows on TV tonight, but I want you to also get the trash cans emptied. Okay, that's your chore. And I want you to get the trash cans emptied. Well, great. So you walk back in, maybe halfway through a show or whatever, and you notice that the trash cans are still full. Nothing's been emptied. And so you say to them again, listen, I want you to get the trash cans emptied. I know you're enjoying these shows, but I want you to get the trash cans empty. Well, that's good. I mean, that obviously is something that at this point we want our children to be obedient in, but they need some limits and they need some consequences to help them make the right choice there. And the right choice, from what I've already suggested, would be to get the trash cans emptied sooner than later. And hopefully, you can help them do that. And one of the ways you could do that is just by simply setting a limit, a clear limit. So, listen, before you can watch the second show on television, I want you to empty the trash cans. All right. If you choose to empty the trash cans, like I'm asking, then you're going to be able to watch the second show. However, if you choose not to empty those trash cans, and the second show begins, you're going to lose the privilege of watching that second show. Now, all I've done is I've put into this conversation, into this matter that I'm trying to use as a part of our healthy child raising process. I've put into the choices a couple of limits or a limit and some consequences. The limit is before the second show begins, the trash cans need to be emptied. And the consequence, in this case, a negative, would be if they're not emptied before the second show begins, we're going to turn the TV off for the night. Or the positive consequence is if you empty the trash cans, then you're going to be able to enjoy the second show. So you can work with those and you can think through those even as you see them all through the scriptures where God repeatedly is trying to help his children make wonderful choices, smart, beautiful, beneficial choices. But oftentimes he will give them limits and then he will give them also positive and negative consequences as a part of the process of learning to do that which is right in God's eyes. And so I just pass that along to you. I hope it can be a part of your discussion with parents and grandparents in your own home. Maybe you could just ask yourself or others, how is your child raising plan similar to God's? Do you are you thinking often about choices? Are you thinking and setting limits about limits? Are you setting appropriate consequences? I mean, ultimately, our hope in this, as our children mature, as our grandchildren mature, as children in the church mature, our ultimate hope in this is that they would be smart in the choices that they make. And therefore, they would set appropriate limits, knowing that there are beneficial consequences and there are harmful consequences. And they would choose to do that which is right in the eyes of God. Well, I trust that will help you. May God continue to minister in and through you in all the ways that you're ministering over this next month. God bless.